and I'd be like, you know, nobody knows how much I'm dying inside right now. Like, this is stressful. Hey guys, so a little bit more up close and personal today than usual. I'm just kind of loving the light at the moment. It's really nice in my front window, so I thought this would be a good time to film. We're up to video number 4 in the Agoraphobia series, except this video is going to be a bit more about the current state of affairs rather than agoraphobia in general. So I've been getting quite a few comments and messages from people asking about dealing with agoraphobia in the current state that the world is in. Obviously, if you're someone who had been doing exposure sessions and feeling like you were making progress and then the world went into this global lockdown, it can feel scary because you worry that you're going to lose all the progress you made, or that you're going to go backwards and you're going to maybe become housebound again. There's an element of fear with leaving the house now that there wasn't before, that, you know, everyone is feeling, I think, even people who don't have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. So there's a lot of that going on. And I think people, I guess one of the questions I've been getting a lot is just how am I coping in general, and how can we support ourselves during this time. So the first thing I wanted to make a note of is that it is really important that you give yourself permission to feel more anxious than usual at this time, because like I said, everybody is feeling that way at this point in time. This is something that's never happened to the world before. It's weird. Nobody knows what the fuck to do. Nobody has navigated something like this before. Everyone is figuring out how to respond to this as they go along. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you wake up some days and feel anxious about it, if you're going to sleep at night worrying about, you know, what it's going to be like in a week or in 2 weeks, just know that you aren't alone. Like, you are not weird or abnormal for thinking those things, because everyone is thinking those things at the moment. And that is rational anxiety. There is something that is uncertain, and it's okay that your mind is going to want to try and figure that out, and it's going to worry about it, and you're going to feel a little unsettled because things aren't running as normal at the moment. So really give yourself some space. And if you are feeling those emotions, know that they are normal. Give yourself permission to feel them. And something I find really helpful is journaling through those feelings. So just writing down exactly what it is I'm feeling, like, you know, I'm feeling afraid or I'm feeling frustrated, and then asking myself, why am I feeling that? Like, what's the feeling beneath that emotion? What is that emotion trying to tell me? I've been feeling a lot of frustration lately. I guess it's just, you know, from not being in my normal routine, because as someone who worked really hard to gain back a normal routine, it feels weird having that taken away from me. But on the flip side of that, I know Pig's about to bark right now because there's someone walking past the window. On the flip side of that, I've also enjoyed a lot of this time alone as well. But I have allowed that feeling of frustration to be there because I know that it's normal. I know that it is irritating. Sometimes, you know, I'm used to having the house to myself a lot of the time when Lila's at kinder, and like now I'm feeling crowded and I'm feeling like people are here all the time. And so I write down exactly what I'm feeling. I ask myself, you know, what is beneath that feeling, and then I ask myself if there's anything that I can do to support that emotion. But basically the gist of that whole thing is just really knowing that whatever you're feeling at this time is okay, because there isn't any way you are supposed to be feeling, okay? The next thing that I wanted to touch on is that the fear that you are going to go backwards, or that you're going to become housebound again. I know that's a very real thing, and this kind of doesn't just go for the whole COVID thing. This can go for setbacks in general when you're doing exposure sessions. I always used to have that fear that I was going to have a big panic attack and then I was going to become housebound again. And this happened to me quite a few times as I was sort of recovering from agoraphobia. I had a few knocks that freaked me out, and I was like, I am actually not going to be able to leave the house after this. The thing that you need to know about that is it is not possible for you to go back to square one. You have too much knowledge now, and it was knowledge that you didn't have back then. every step that you've taken so far in your recovery of agoraphobia, whether or not you've just started exposure or you're about to start, or you're a couple of exposures deep, or even if you've been doing it for a while, you have learnt things. Even if you aren't quite sure what those things are yet, I promise you have learnt things. You have learned things about yourself, about your strength, about your skills, about the areas in which you need extra care. You know more now than you did back then. So it is not possible for you to go back to where you were with the knowledge that you now have. I really want you to get it out of your head that you are going to go backwards, or that things are going to get bad again, because you can't. You might find it a little more difficult to get out of the house than you were finding it, say, 2 months ago or prior to all this COVID stuff happening. But even this part of the journey is going to be just as important as everything else. The things that you learn from trying to go out of the house now while this COVID thing's happening are going to be so important. It's actually a really good opportunity for you to become more comfortable with discomfort, because there is a fair bit more discomfort around now than there was 2 months ago. For example, the other day I was grocery shopping and I was walking down the frozen food aisle, and suddenly it just didn't feel real. Like, I was walking and I'm like, am I in an alternate fucking universe? Like, this feels bizarre. It was eerie. There wasn't a lot of people. The people that were there were wearing masks and gloves, and it seemed so strange. And I had a second where I was like, where am I? Like, what planet is this? In that moment, I didn't like that feeling of things not feeling real. So I worked really hard to kind of ground myself. I really noticed my hands on the trolley. I really noticed my breath. I noticed my feet, my footsteps on the ground. I noticed everything in the freezer aisle. Like, I was counting the things in the freezer aisle. I really took a moment to ground myself, and besides the fact that that was an uncomfortable situation to be in and I didn't like it, it's now given me the tools that I didn't have prior to that scenario. Does that make sense? You are going to learn things that are just as valuable, if not more valuable, going out now than you were if you had, continued doing exposure and this whole COVID thing had never happened. This is going to be a really good way for you to learn more about yourself. So really open up to that. Which brings me to my next point. I want to talk for a minute about expansion and contraction. I think for a lot of agoraphobics, you get to the point where when you start doing exposure sessions, you feel like your world is expanding. And it's really exciting, and you kind of are scared, but you also want to keep pushing and keep expanding your... Whoa! Pig just shook his head and smacked his head on the window. Sorry, baby, you okay? Oh, did you hurt your noggin? Silly boy. What was I saying? Yeah, expansion and contraction. So you get to the point where you are expanding your comfort zone, and it's scary, but it's feeling good. And now suddenly we've had this global lockdown pretty much, and it's contraction. And you're feeling like your world is getting smaller again. What is going to be really valuable for you to counteract this is know that just because it's contraction in the sense that we're in lockdown, it's also an opportunity for you to find other areas in which you can expand. So what I mean by that basically is really use this time to start new habits. I know that's kind of a cliched thing. At the start of COVID, there was like this meme going around where everyone was saying, I'm going to use this time to learn a new language or whatever. I kind of mean that, but I also really mean that it's time to focus on how you can grow. How can you really blow out your growth and your learning of yourself during this time that you can't physically expand your comfort zone? How can you do it at home? If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I'm always talking about yoga and how valuable it's been for me and how life-changing it's been for me. If you haven't started a yoga practice, start one. Yin yoga is probably my favorite. There are plenty of videos on YouTube that are available to you to do at home that are free, obviously. Start your mindfulness meditation. Start doing, some breath work. Like, start exploring lots of different ways of wellness. Start a new journal practice. Amber Ray, I will link her down below. She's on Instagram. She has I think it's a 30-day journal prompt thing that you can do at any time, which is really cool and really, really amazing, and a really good way to get you feeling your emotions and in touch with your emotions. So that's something that you could do. Starting a new book. Joe Dispenza's books are my favorites. I've spoken about them before. There is some mind-bending shit in those books. Like, basically, how can you learn during this time? How can you teach yourself? How can you unfold? How can you become the person that you want to be post agoraphobia? Just because you can't do as many exposure sessions as you maybe wanted to, it doesn't mean you can't still expand your learning and your growth. The next thing that I wanted to say is that I really don't want you to pretend that this is the thing that's standing in the way of you and beating agoraphobia. What I mean by that is, this makes it hard to go outside for sure. But if you are somebody who deals with agoraphobia, it was already hard for you to go outside, right? There is always going to be something standing in the way of you and the things that scare you. And that's the reason why you don't want to do them. There is always going to be a reason why you don't want to do the things that scare you. Currently, COVID might be your reason, and fair enough, because yeah, it is kind of scary going outside right now, but it doesn't matter. There is always going to be something that you tell yourself is the reason why you can't go and expose yourself to the things that scare you. You can still, I'm pretty sure in most countries you can still at least go outside for a walk, for some exercise, like go and walk your dog. I know in Australia we were able to go out for essentials, and we were able to go out for, a walk or an exercise, like run around the park or whatever. But basically it just had to be an essential sort of trip. If that is available to you in where you are, you can still go out once a day and do the shit that scares you. I know Elle commented on one of my recent videos and said that she had been kind of like not going out during lockdown because it was, pretty overwhelming, but she watched one of my videos and then she went out for a walk. She was like, I'm gonna do this, which is amazing. So you can still go out, you can still do an exposure session. You might not be able to do it exactly the way you wanted to do before, but you can still do that. And I think it's really important to remind yourself of that. Daily walks for me right now are everything, or they were. Like, our restrictions are about to be lifted, but I remember 2 weeks ago, daily walks were like the thing. I needed to have a walk every day. I would take Lila out, we would go down to the Oval and have a little run around. Really important to still do that. You can still go for a drive if you are still able to go to the grocery store with your restrictions. Go out and do that. Don't let this stand between you and doing your exposure sessions, because I'm sure there are still ways that you can do them. When you do go out and do your exposure sessions, if you do go for a walk or if you do go to the grocery store and you find it really, really overwhelming, I think something that's helpful with that, remember that everybody else is feeling the same way you are. I know when I was first doing exposure sessions, I would be walking through the supermarket and I'd be like, nobody knows how much I'm dying inside right now. Like, this is stressful, and everyone else is able to just go and get their Vegemite and get their bread and their milk and not worry about life. And I'm the only one who's in here feeling like I'm fighting for breath. There are many more people out at the grocery store that are feeling overwhelmed and anxious right now, because like I said, everyone's feeling the stress of this time. So know that you aren't the only one when you go out there feeling a little bit more stressed than usual. But like I said, remind yourself that this is another opportunity for you to learn and for you to grow and for you to face the things that scare you in a way that you wouldn't have been able to prior to this COVID thing. So really embrace that. I know it seems weird to be talking about Corona and saying embrace it, but you guys know what I mean. Sorry, there's a very loud plane flying overhead. One of the things that I have found really comforting when I go out now, because the thing that stresses me out when I go out is that I don't like that everyone's wearing gloves and masks, and it freaks me out, and I feel disconnected, and I don't like that. So I look for the connection. I will try and make eye contact with everyone who walks past, and I will try and catch somebody's eye and smile at them. If you can do that when you go out, not only is it going to pull you out of your own head, but I think in this time of disconnect, in this time where we are all literally physically distanced, I think it's really important to connect yourself to other human beings when you do go out. So if you are out and you are feeling panicky, I have spoken about this in my exposure session video on my tips for that. But just remember that during this time, we are all in this together. Everyone is in the same boat. Everyone is feeling stressed and anxious. So catch people's eye and try and connect with them and smile at them, and do your part to reassure someone else. Do your part to connect with another human being and make them feel nurtured and make them feel connected. And that in turn is going to, like I said, pull you out of your own head, but also make you feel better. The only other thing I wanted to, well, thank you, Pig. The only other thing I wanted to say in terms of coping in this whole COVID situation is really increase your self-care game. I know that, again, is something that sounds really cliched and is spoken about a lot, but it's pretty much imperative at this point in time. For me, again, yoga every day, been writing a lot more, I've been journaling a lot more, I've been meditating a lot more, I've been reading a lot more. Keep up your exercise, keep eating nourishing meals. I think routine is really important in this time of uncertainty. So making sure you're getting out of bed, getting dressed, looking after yourself in like taking care of your basic needs, brushing your teeth, drinking water, just really making sure that you are showing up for yourself and you are taking care of yourself. It can be easy in this time to kind of want to just stay in bed and hide away. But now more than ever, you need to show up for yourself and you really need to nurture yourself. If you want to share below how you are increasing your self-care during this time, I think it's always really helpful to hear what other people are doing and how they are doing it. So comment down below. My favorite way of self-care during this whole COVID thing, I think, has just been to, what have I liked doing? I've really been into, we've been lighting the fire outside on the deck, and so sitting out there at night and journaling, or even just sitting out there and just kind of breathing and enjoying it and relaxing, I've found that a really nice routine to have at the moment. It's this kind of certain thing that I look forward to during the week. We haven't done it this week though because it's been raining, but yeah, it's kind of like I know that I have that to look forward to, and that's a time where I get to really like connect with Anthony and with Lila and with myself. So yeah, I am not personally worried that I am going to struggle with anxiety after this. Like I said, with Australia, our restrictions are already starting to lift, and I am feeling more anxious than usual, but I know that everything I've learned so far in the last, in my lifetime, but really in the last 5 years about agoraphobia and about panic attacks and about myself, I know that I have the tools in place to be able to support myself, and I've seen how strong I am. And so I know that no matter what happens, I am going to be able to move forward. And if there's a moment of pain, or even if there's a period of time where I'm feeling more overwhelmed or more anxious, I know that that is a part of the journey. That is just as important as the times when I feel like everything's going well and when I feel like I'm, expanding at a rapid rate and everything's amazing. Both the darkness and the light are equally as important as each other. If that made sense. But yeah, I hope you guys are all doing well and enjoying your day. And yeah, sending you big love. You guys, look at my dog right now. Pig's living the quarantine dream. Hey, mate.